At least 70 people were killed and more than 230 injured in the Gaza Strip hours after a ceasefire agreement between Israel and the Palestinian resistance movement Hamas was confirmed. In Venezuela, President Nicolás Maduro signed a decree to carry out a constitutional reform in a democratic and participatory manner. And Cuba's Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez said on Wednesday that the decision of the United States government to remove Cuba from the list of countries that allegedly sponsor terrorism is a sign that its destabilization plans against the Caribbean island have failed. Hello and welcome to From the South. My name is Belén de los Santos. I'm from the teleSUR studios in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with the news. And we begin with the situation in the Middle East. At least 70 people were killed and more than 230 injured in the Gaza Strip hours after the ceasefire agreement between Israel and the Palestinian resistance movement Hamas was confirmed. The Lebanese channel Al Mayadeen pointed out that in less than an hour, the Israeli occupation intensified the intense attacks throughout the Gaza Strip. In this regard, they reported that at least 18 people were killed by new aerial bombardment against a residential building in western Gaza, while another similar event was reported where more than 30 people were killed by attacks by the Tel Aviv regime in the last 24 hours. Also detailed that the Israeli regime is attacking several sites in the enclave despite the official announcement on Wednesday of a ceasefire between the Palestinian resistance movement Hamas and Israel after 15 months of ongoing genocide. And we now move on to other topics. In the United Kingdom, activists from the Revolutionary Communist Group and allied organizations marched on Wednesday to the headquarters of The Guardian newspaper to protest the media manipulation of the Global South anti-imperialist struggles. Carrying flags from Venezuela, Palestine and Cuba, demonstrators denounced the London-based newspaper's misrepresentation of information, particularly pertaining the undermining of struggles that stand against British imperialist interests, such as the coverage of Israel's genocide in Gaza. In this context, activists also condemned the media treatment of the January 10th presidential inauguration in Venezuela, where thousands went to the streets in support of the democratically elected President Nicolás Maduro, mobilizations that The Guardian failed to cover, instead focusing on proven fake news.
Manipulated in the media, but you can see really clearly why when you look at Venezuela. Do you know that in the Bank of England, just a few miles from here, the Bank of England has stolen over $1 billion of Venezuelans' gold. $1 billion of Venezuelans' gold. Because they say that they don't recognize the elected government of Nicolás Maduro. They've been saying that since 2018. And instead of reporting the truth about Venezuela, the thousands of people who were out on the streets, the workers, the campesinos, the women, the grandparents, the youth, all of those people, the indigenous people, they were out on the streets, the trade unionists, they were supporting the inauguration of Nicolás Maduro. They were supporting the Venezuelan Bolivarian Revolution, and they were not covered in the pages of The Guardian nor the BBC, because for The Guardian and the BBC, the working class, the poor, the people of Venezuela are invisible. Well, it's our duty to make them visible, to tell the truth about what is happening in Venezuela.
And the Prime Minister of Denmark, Mette Frederiksen, confirmed on Wednesday that the island of Greenland is not for sale. The statements were made in a telephone conversation with the President-elect of the United States, Donald Trump. Frederiksen thus reiterated the words of Greenland's Premier, Mudvi Ajed, who stated that the island is not for sale. In this sense, the Danish premier maintained that it is up to Greenland to decide on its independence. In this regard, she also indicated that Denmark is willing to strengthen security in the Arctic region and emphasize the importance of this. The telephone conversation took place after the U.S. President-elect Donald Trump in recent weeks declared his intention that Greenland, now a constituent nation of the Kingdom of Denmark, should become part of the United States. We go now to South Africa as police announced the end of the rescue operation at the Baffelstoften illegal gold mine in which 78 people were killed. The commissioner in charge stated that the extractions from the mine are complete. However, authorities will conduct a further subway sweep to ensure that no one else is inside the mine. Of the 246 people that were found alive, 128 were Mozambicans, 80 were from Lesotho, 33 were from Zimbabwe, and 5 were South Africans. In November, the authorities launched an operation to expel the men who were mining illegally at the closed Baffelstoften gold mine, cutting off their food and water supply from the surface for a period of time. And the island of Vanuatu is holding early elections a month after a devastating earthquake struck the south of the Pacific nation. Local television footage showed queues of voters in the capital, Port Vila, on Thursday, although many are expected to be unable to vote because they have been displaced by the quake, which killed at least 14 people, injured some 210, and displaced thousands. Vanuatu elects a new 52-member parliament and leadership after early elections were called following the opposition's November vote of no confidence in President Nike Burovaburo and Prime Minister Charlotte Salve. And in China, the Ministry of Commerce announced that 4 new U.S. companies have been added to the list of untrustworthy entities for selling arms to Taiwan. The 4 companies in question are prohibited from engaging in import or export activities related to China and from making new investments within the country. These 4 companies join 7 other companies already sanctioned by Beijing and banned from any import or export activities to or from the Asian giant. And now we have a short break coming up, but first, remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. We continue with the information. We go to Latin America as Venezuela's President Nicolás Maduro held on Wednesday his annual report speech to the nation. He both took stock a balance of 2024 and provided a look forward to the year that has just started. Details of the presidential speech from our special envoy Yunus Soner in Caracas.
The Bolivarian constitution requires the president to hold an annual speech in front of the National Assembly within 10 days of the beginning of the parliamentary year. Venezuela's president took a look back and emphasized economic recovery despite the U.S. sanctions regime.
El crecimiento de la economía.
Regarding economic growth, according to already consolidated data and the preliminary projection of the central bank, it is that the growth of the economy in Venezuela 2024 exceeded 9% of the gross domestic product.
Looking forward, the president announced new measures, such as the establishment of a new Ministry of Foreign Trade, simplifying bureaucratic processes for exports, and the introduction of a digital Venezuelan currency. Reforms in economy will be accompanied by those in the constitution, Maduro said, and acted.
He decidido firmar aquí en este acto la creación
I have decided to sign here, in this event, the creation of the National, Unitary and Inclusive Commission for Constitutional Reform.
Usually, the speech is held in the National Assembly, but Maduro spoke in the Cultural Center of Teresa Carreño in Caracas, joined by thousands, a continuation of taking the presidential oath both in the parliament and later with the people.
Así que preparémonos para que todos
So let us get prepared so that all 38 parties nominate their candidates, and very soon we will be in democratic normality, electing deputies, governors, legislators, mayors and municipality council members.
Constitutional reform, elections and the normal democratic life. For some observers, the president's main message was an invitation.
We are going to invest all our money that we produce in the petroleum industry, in the agriculture industry, in the benefits and the happiness of our people. That's about, it is socialism about. So this message is very illustrating for the people in Venezuela that we have to get together and get united, you know, because we are all Venezuelan people.
In his annual speech to the nation, President Maduro constructed bridges from the past to the future, from description to action, from government to opposition, and from the presidency to the people. Yunus Sonar, Telesur, Caracas, Venezuela.
And in Ecuador, the electoral campaign for the presidential elections set for February 9th is advancing amid the ongoing political and social crisis gripping the country. Political proselytism continues to develop despite the deepening rift between President Daniel Noboa and Vice President Veronica Abad, a conflict that escalated with Abad's recent removal from office. The government is also facing widespread public outcry following the tragic murder of 4 young people who were last seen in the custody of military personnel and later found dead. Meanwhile, a new crime has further rocked the province of El Oro with the assassination of acting mayor Eber Ponce, the top authority of the Arenillas community, who was shot multiple times while traveling in a vehicle. And 9 years after the arbitrary detention of the social Argentinian leader Milagro Sala, several social, political and syndicalist organizations will carry out a caravan on January 16th to denounce the persecution of the social activist and demand her release. The caravan seeks not only to make visible the case of Sala, but also the broader context of political repression faced by popular organizations in Argentina. Milagro Sala, leader of the social organization Tupac Amaru, was arbitrarily detained under domiciliary arrest on January 16th of 2016 after participating in an encampment in front of the government house of Jujuy, where she was resisting the first measures of Governor Gerardo Morales. Now we have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at teleSUR English. There you will be able to rewatch our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. We continue with the information. Cuba's Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez Parrilla said on Wednesday that the decision of the United States government to remove Cuba from the list of countries that allegedly sponsor terrorism is a sign that the destabilization plans against the Caribbean island have failed. During a press conference in Havana, Rodriguez Parrilla denounced that the list is unilateral and arbitrary and lacks credibility and prestige on an international level. He also reiterated that the Cuban government has maintained and continues to maintain the firm and historic resolve to hold a respectful and responsible dialogue with Washington on the basis of equality, sovereignty, and without interference in his country's internal affairs. The foreign minister highlighted the considerable humanitarian damage that the U.S. sanctions and blockade have had on Cuban families and praised the resilience of the Cuban people and government in the face of the U.S. hostile policies against the island.
My opinion is that he took that decision because his plan has failed, because the vision of provoking the collapse of the Cuban economy, a social explosion, and the implementation of Mr. Lesser-Mallory's memorandum aimed at overthrowing the Cuban Revolution through measures that bring about hunger, desperation, and finally the government's fall, has not achieved its goals. It is true that the measures of the blockade as a whole, particularly its strengthening as of 2017 and especially the additional measures taken by the previous Republican government since the middle of 2019 have created very difficult circumstances to our economy. Have generated considerable humanitarian damage, have provoked hardship, anxiety, suffering to the Cuban families. However, neither the economy has collapsed nor the government has been overthrown.
In this context, Bruno Rodriguez also referred about the relations between Cuba and the United States.
The Cuban government has historically and persistently proposed respectful and responsible dialogues to the government of the United States of America on the basis of sovereign equality, reciprocal benefit, mutual respect, and without interference in the internal affairs of our countries. And that has been said publicly and repeatedly by President Fidel Castro, by President Raúl Castro, by President Miguel Díaz-Canel, and it has also been repeatedly said privately in a respectful way. We should ask the government of the United States why it has waited until now to do what it could have done and what many of its voters, including citizens of Cuban origin, have been waiting for since the election, because in his electoral platform the president committed himself to adopting significant changes in the United States policy on Cuba.
And in Peru, heavy rains accompanied by strong winds and hail have damaged nearly 30 homes and affected several crops and animals in the province of Celendín, north of the country. According to the authorities, the layers of ice formed by the hail covered up to 5 centimeters of soil and grass, damaging corn, potato, and bean crops. Some families in the area requested the assistance of other institutions, such as the regional government of Cajamarca and the national government, to assess the level of damage and find possible solutions and alternatives to this problem. Likewise, hail and strong winds caused the roofs of the most vulnerable houses to give way under the excess weight, forcing residents to evacuate while the storm passes. And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and also on TikTok. For TeleSUR English, my name is Belén de los Santos. Thank you for watching.